Welcome to F3, Financial Accounting. The first few minutes with you I shall devote to introducing the syllabus, telling you what it's about, how to pass, etc. Then I'll take you into a few words about the past papers. Then I'll take you into a few do's and don'ts, and then perhaps we can look at a couple of exam questions. This is what I hope to achieve over the next few minutes. But welcome, my name is Francis Braganza. I've been teaching ACCA papers for a long time, and I understand from one of my bosses that approximately 27,000 students have passed with me. So that's very exciting for me, of course, but the biggest thing, of course, is you must pass. So the first concern I have is to show you how this F3 financial accounting works. My background is in accounting. I did a degree in accounting, and then I did the ICAW exams, which is very similar to ACCA. It just happens to be another stream, which is very strong on financial accounting and auditing, those two papers. Those are my best papers, so I teach mainly financial accounting these days. But welcome, the most warm welcome I extend to you. What is F3 all about? My first concern. It is obviously a first-level accounting paper testing the understanding of double-entry accounting. So whenever something happens, let's say the person who owns the business, he or she puts in, say, $10,000 into the business. Obviously, the business gets cash of $10,000, but the business owes that money to the owner. So that is shown up as a liability or capital. So notice there's an asset going into the business, but the business owes that money outside to the owner. So the concept is everything that happens has got a debit and a credit, the language of accountancy. So, double entry as we call it. I'll explain in a few minutes how that works. Explaining the context and purpose of financial reporting. In other words, the business that I described, the person who owns a business, carries on this business either on his own, her own, or with help from staff. And the business continues, you see, for several years. But rather artificially, we cut it off every 12 months to work out whether we've made a profit or a loss. So imagine you're the business, you're the person who owns the business, you're running this business, and of course it's a continuous stream of transactions. But every 12 months, we cut it off and we treat it as if the business has been in operation for 12 months. What profit or loss did we make? But inevitably, because we were in business last year, let's suppose, there will be some brought forward figures from last year. So that kind of thing is what this paper is about. So you've got to record transactions and events, as we say there. You've got to be able to define the qualitative characteristics of accounting. That's to say, are we doing proper matching of costs and revenues to give profit? Are we respecting what's known as the concept of prudence? Are we being sensible in the way we measure profit? What else? Are the accounts true and fair if we have to submit them to stakeholders, the tax authorities, etc.? So true and fair, truth and fairness, that's important. So these are some qualitative characteristics. Is it timely? Is it produced on time? Is it accurate? Etc. And of course, some of the fundamental bases of accounting, as I'll show you. From that, you prepare a trial balance. You then prepare basic financial statements. That's what's being tested, final accounts, as it's called, for sole traders, partnerships, companies, etc. And of course, you must understand basic international accounting standards. Never ignore those. I also teach F7, which I hope to see you on very soon. Once you've done your F3, obviously I'd recommend you do F4, 5, 6. before you start looking at 7, 8, 9. I teach 7, financial reporting. But this paper very closely links up with F7. But I'd strongly recommend, once you've done your F3, to do F4, 5, 6. In other words, do them in the order that the ACCA recommends. That is to say, in subject number order. Because what I need on F7 is not just F3 material, but there's a bit of law, F4, a bit of ratios and things like that from F5, and obviously F6, a bit of tax. So I would suggest do it in that order. But F7 is my main paper. Now, in that, international accounting standards are very important. So if you get used to studying them at F3, when you come up to doing F7, you'll find it very easy. So this F3 paper, a very, very easy paper to pass, as I'm about to demonstrate. There are some syllabus areas that one must be aware of. First of all, the context and purpose of financial reporting. Why do we do financial reporting? Notice the word is not financial accounting that the ACCA uses here. It's called financial reporting. So it's almost like this paper, F3, leads on to my main paper, F7, which is called financial reporting, as you might know. Qualitative characteristics, as I've explained, the use of double entry and accounting systems, recording transactions and events, preparing a trial balance, and preparing basic financial statements. So very similar, those are the syllabus areas. The exam format itself, F3 is assessed by a 2-hour exam, either paper-based or computer-based. I'd recommend doing the computer-based, though obviously either one is fine. The reason why I like doing the computer-based, because I've tried some of these ACCA exams myself after I've qualified, just to learn how to use the computer and to get a bit more familiar with navigating the various buttons and tick boxes, etc. It's very, very easy, actually. I'd recommend doing the computer-based exam because it's just you and a computer in front of you, and you click, and you're given 4 alternatives in most cases, and you choose between A, B, C, and D. Sometimes you're guessing. No one knows you're guessing. You do some workings. No one sees those workings. So it's really you against the computer. And if you use a computer a lot, and I dare say most people do these days, it's quite a friendly environment. So I'd strongly recommend doing the computer-based exam. All parts of the syllabus will be assessed, and the exam will include both computational and non-computational elements. I've spoken to the examiner at length about this, and she says, please tell your students to take the non-computational side seriously. So there will be 42 mark questions, 40 questions of 2 marks each. What's that? 42's 80, and there's 10 1-mark questions, so that makes 90 in all. Now, if you divide your 2 hours, which is what, 120 minutes? If you divide your 120 minutes by 90 marks, what we're saying is you get about 1.33 minutes per mark. What I find when I do some of these exams, just to try them out, some questions will take quite a long time to do. A 2-mark question normally you'd think is 2.67 minutes, but it might take you 4 or 5 minutes to do. But don't panic, because when you go to the next question or in a couple of questions' time, you might look at it, and even if it is only 1 mark, you can do it within 10 seconds. You can say, right, that's the answer. I'll demonstrate one of those a little later on today. So don't worry ever if you're running out of time. But the nice thing about the computer-based exam is that there's a clock running. You can see how many questions you've done. It's very, very user-friendly. I give the ACCA huge credit for trialing these things. And there are lots of sitters who try out these exams. And if there are any problems in the questions, they're ironed out. The examiner comes to know about them, and she corrects them. And so what the student gets is a very, very easy-to-use system. So I'd encourage you once more to use the computer-based exam. And never panic if a question is taking you 5 minutes to do. because the next question might just take you 10 seconds. So it'll all even out in the end. It's a very fair paper, and the length of time they give you is very, very fair. Like most things ACCA do. It's an excellent qualification. And, I warmly welcome you to it. Right, how to pass. Obviously, you've got to master the double entry technique. Every debit must have a credit, that kind of thing. Understanding how transactions are converted into the language of accountancy, debits and credits. So in a few minutes, I'll show you my own little technique, which I've developed personally over the years and has helped thousands of people to pass. So I hope to recommend to you strongly my method. So I'll show you that in due course. What else? How to pass. Being able to rule off ledger accounts and produce a trial balance. So what is an account? Every time the company has a transaction or the owner has a transaction, let's imagine we've got a company. Let's say a company issues some shares to the public, and in exchange for the piece of paper called a share, which they issue to the public give the company some cash. So obviously cash comes in, so you increase the asset of cash, you call it a debit to cash, and a credit to share capital, that kind of thing. But I'll explain that in more detail as we go along. So every transaction you have, let's say with cash, goes into something called a cash book, or if you like, a big T account like that, with debits and credits, that deals with cash. The reason why it's called an account is a story. I could describe to you my journey today into this recording studio. What did I do? Which building did I go to? Which train did I use, etc. What I did on the train before I arrived and what happened subsequently to that. So if I tell you a story, I'm giving you an account of what happened over the last 3 hours for me to get to this place. Now, an account is a story, and a summary of everything that has happened to, let's say, the cash account goes into this thing called a cash book, we call it, because it's quite a busy account. But an account is a story. You have debits and credits, and at the end of a certain period of time, let's say a year, the account is ruled off, and you must demonstrate the ability to rule off an account.